Hi, I'm Kaya. I'm a content writer. A lot of people choose to write their own content for their website or their blog or their marketing collateral, and it's not a bad idea. After all, who knows your business better than you do? Unfortunately, there is a difference between writing and writing effectively, especially for digital content, which works a little bit differently from the way we all grew up and learned. When you add to all that the fact that language never stops changing, it's a living, breathing, evolving thing, it can be really tricky to keep up. So I'm here to be sort of your content godmother and guide you through some of the ways you can keep your digital content really effective and eye-catching. So I've separated the kind of rules or guidelines you can follow into grammar, personality, and readability. And we're going to start with grammar. Your teachers and your professors, they meant well, they really did, but chances are they kind of chiseled some bad habits or some outdated habits, I guess, into your consciousness. So there are a few things that we all do, or most of us do, in our writing that are no longer relevant. They're kind of grammar myths, if you will. The first one is 2 spaces between sentences. You do not need this for any kind of digital copy. This rule was kind of put together for typewriters because typewriters can't tell the difference between a space between words in the middle of a sentence and the space at the beginning of a sentence. Computers are smarter than the average typewriter, so you actually don't even need to include that. Your computer will automatically format that for you. And if you do include that extra space, it can actually mess up your layout and your formatting on your web page. So it's really important to avoid that when you can. Another thing that we learn not to do is start a sentence with a conjunction. But you can do that, and you should do that, like I just did, because that's how we speak. And digital content is inherently more casual and conversational. That's how we pull people in. That's how we make them feel comfortable, by using a more casual and conversational tone. And along the same line is ending a sentence with a proposition. But we do it all the time. Tell me what sounds more natural to you. Who are you going to the dance with? Or with whom are you going to the dance? Second one is way too formal. Nobody speaks that way. So although it can be a little bit awkward and not technically correct, you can end a sentence with a preposition. It's just more casual. It's just more conversational. It's just the way we use language. Most of us grew up believing we should put periods between the individual letters in acronyms. You don't need to do that. We're at the point now where you can see an acronym. You can see 4 capital letters in a row, and no, that's an acronym. When you add the periods in between each letter, in a digital layout, it just looks messy. It looks cluttered. You don't need to do that. You can simplify that for yourself. In a literature setting, it's not uncommon to use the word he as a gender non-specific pronoun. But unfortunately, that's actually really exclusive, and we don't need to do that anymore. And some people remedy this by saying he/she. That's way too wordy. It's way too complicated. You don't even need to do that. You can just use the word they. It does function as a singular pronoun, and we use it all the time. When we don't know somebody's gender, we refer to them usually as they, even if it's just one person. So feel free to use they in your writing instead of he or he/she. Unless you specifically know the gender of the person you're talking about, use they. You're never going to exclude anybody that way. And then the final bad grammar habit that I want to cover is active voice versus passive voice. A lot of us write in passive voice. When you listen to a newscaster, they're probably speaking in passive voice. Joe was arrested and questioned by the police. What you're actually doing there is adding more words than you need. If you shift it into active voice, you get the police arrested and questioned Joe versus Joe was arrested and questioned by the police arrested and questioned Joe. Fewer words, much more clear. It's less formal, so you do need to be careful because sometimes you'll have to use passive voice. But in most cases, you don't need to be that formal with digital content. So I highly recommend you do some research on active voice and look into that more. So now that we've kind of wrapped up grammar, we're going to talk about readability. When was the last time you went on the internet just to read? Most of us are looking for specific answers. So we need to help readers do that. We need to make the content really easy to read because chances are your readers are skimming. That's how readers usually interact with digital content. It's normal. What we need to do is make it easy for them to skim and get the information they're looking for. So here's how you do that. First of all, bite-sized sections. Digital paragraphs need to be much shorter than a standard print paragraph. You were probably taught 3 to 5 sentences per paragraph. 5 sentences in digital content is way too long. 3 is your top. Even if you're still on the same topic and you have 5 sentences, do 3 sentences and then 2 sentences. Just split it up wherever it makes sense. You need to make the sections really small because people are going to get discouraged if they see big, long walls of text. So different paragraphs, and your paragraphs can all be about the same thing. Even if you're not done one topic, a certain topic, you can split that into paragraphs. It's easier for them to digest. And then you want relevant headlines. And a relevant headline works kind of like the tab on a file folder. It tells your reader exactly what they're looking for and where they're going to find it. Okay, this section is about the symptoms of this particular illness. This section is about our return policy. Whatever it may be, it helps your reader find what they're looking for faster. You need to map out what exactly you want included on each page or blog post with headlines for each section, what that section is going to entail, and whether there are subsections. So if I'm writing a blog about a certain disease, and there are 3 different strains of the disease, I'll go symptoms, and then symptoms for strain A, symptoms for strain B, symptoms for strain C, and all of those will have a little bit of content under each. That makes it really easy to traverse and find what you need. And if you plan it out before you start, you'll never end up with 2 really well organized sections and then like a wall of text at the end because there's a bunch of stuff that you forgot to mention before. I really love big, fancy potpourri words that aren't necessary but really add drama and excitement to what I'm writing. Digital content is not necessarily the best place for those. Now, use adjectives, be descriptive, but if there's even a 10% chance your reader's not going to know what that word means, it's not a good fit. It needs to be easy for them to understand on a first read through. The next thing you want to talk about is personality. Your content is your medium for talking to your client. That's how you tell them what you're doing. So think about your sales pitch. Think about how you describe things. That needs to be reflected in your content. Consider who you're writing for. Who are you selling to? Are you selling to women involved in knitting circles that are in their 60s? If so, edgy and dark, as much fun as it might be to write, might not be the direction you want to go. Alternatively, if you're selling to young men in their 20s that are interested in extreme sports, talking about fluffy kittens and beautiful fragrances might not be exactly what you're going for. So really think about who you're talking to. You also want to consider tone and voice. Now, there's a lot of an idea floating around that tone and voice are the same thing. No, not so. Think about your mom. This is the example I like to use. Your mom has a specific voice. My mom's also a writer, so she speaks with quite floral, interesting, descriptive language. That doesn't change no matter how she's speaking to me. Now, her tone changes. If she's angry at me, she addresses me differently. The way she speaks doesn't change, but the way she delivers a message, the intent, does change. So that's kind of a good way to think about it. Here's an example of a professional, no-nonsense voice with a warm and nurturing tone. Kaya's Eye Clinic puts your family's needs first. Our compassionate, caring staff are here to ensure you feel comfortable and relaxed for your appointment. Now here's that same message in the same tone, coming from more of a casual, laid-back voice. Your family comes first at Kaya's Eye Clinic. Whether it's a cup of tea or just a friendly smile, our amazing team will do whatever it takes to make you feel at home. You can say the same thing and you can mean the same thing. It's still nurturing and warm and comforting, but there's all business, no nonsense, and much more casual, friendly, laid back. And that's really an important part of personality. You need to make sure it's very clear who you are and what you stand for through your web content. If you keep all of these things in mind, you're going to write killer content that's going to grab people, interest people, and hold on to their attention. And that is no small feat. The one thing that you really need to remember is that language does change. There are trends. What we learned in school for what's okay with grammar and what's not, it changes all the time. Words that weren't words become words. Now, I'm not suggesting you use words like lit or I don't even know what the kids are saying these days. I'm 26 and already out of touch. I'm not saying you use slang, but keep an eye on digital writing trends, and a great way to do that is to follow blogs. take in at least 2 or 3 long form, so like listicles, blogs, pieces of digital content a week. And you'll get an innate sense for what's popular and how people are communicating digitally. It's a great way to make your content relevant, which is something everybody's capable of. And I'd love to see what you can come up with.